your proposal is distinctive in objectives and also in presentation. A2C2 considers the impact on the neighborhood, both the immediate neighborhood as well as the extended. Could you first give the impact that you see such a commons would have on the immediate neighborhood, the library and infill you talk about, and you talk about dead zones. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of give us a feel what the impact would be?
Right. The A2D2 process, which was Ann Arbor Discovering Downtown, included Calthorpe and a number of studies, and that created an identification of certain areas in town, including the Midtown District. Midtown District would have civic institutions, museums, a vibrant restaurant and retail life. The post office, the library, and all of these institutions are quite important to civic life. And we know that the library is very well liked and very successful and attracts a number of visitors. And part of the idea was that was the primary anchor at this end of the Midtown District, and the other northern end being the city council, the city hall, and the police and courts building. But those are not the social anchor. Those are the institutional anchor, the government anchor, and this would be the social anchor. And it also is about midway between the campus area and Main Street. So this is a crossroads. What's missing for the library, and always has been, is a significant front porch, a significant setting for this very important institution. So we're thinking that 1 acre, approximately, a little bit more than that, has enough room to create that relationship with the library that the library actually intends by putting their entrance to the interior of that block facing this open space.
Okay, and so then there are some limitations already on this lot, right? To add a street and to add a alley. What do you think of the limitations that have already been placed?
Well, my understanding is that they're not absolutely in stone, but that's what was said at the pre-proposal meeting, where everybody had to attend if they wanted to make a proposal. And from looking at it and studying it, and from the comments I've heard from people talking about their access to the public library, it seems like it is way too dominated by the vehicle. They've added Library Lane as a 2-lane street between 2 one-way streets. So this creates already a conflict of vehicles, much less a conflict of pedestrians. And it's said that the pedestrians will be host to the vehicles, but right now that doesn't look realistic. So I'd like to see a reconsideration of how much space is devoted to traffic lanes for cars, and to have much more formal, or what I'm saying is a much better designated area for pedestrian crossing and pedestrian activity.
Okay, so that's the local. And what about dead zones? You mentioned, because across the street is...
Right. Well, yes. we need things to enliven the dead zones. Now, one thing is, if we put a significant building of concentrated occasional use, a lot of the time that will create another dead zone. And because people will only go there at certain times, and there's not enough open space left over to make it a programmed active space. So to me, that would contribute additionally to the dead space that is created by the parking area for the federal building, by the postal parking area, and then by Blake Transit Center, which is totally devoted to buses and moving vehicles, or it's empty between the cycles of the routes. And then now we have that surface lot that is in place of the old Y building. So you have an entire block that has no active use to front on this space. So we are hoping that by focusing the activity on this open space, that we will diminish the conflicts between the dead zones, and also provide, if we repair the edges of around the open space, that we'll begin to put this focus on the space and repair the gaps along the division where there's a gap for between the camp house and the other significant houses on that side. We can try to make what we create reflect that sort of rhythm of the residential street, which is what Division is at that point. So they aren't all residences, but they have that character.
Right. And then you continue in the proposal to talk about how it will go for blocks and really be a connector. You want to comment on that?
Right. I think there's always been a hope that we would have much more give and take and ebb and flow between Main Street and State Street. But because we don't have the rhythm of interesting and active areas to connect, it just hasn't quite worked the way we hoped. We try to develop retail, and that will continue to happen. But what we hope is that there will be an attraction from both directions that can create this crossroads with this open space, because people will be attracted to green and active and programmed spaces with the anchor of the library, and there'll be more activity or focus on Kemp House, which is our very important civic museum, and of the other retail services, the restaurants and so forth. They'll begin to draw people from both directions, and they might just want to go further and explore what's next, even to the point where when we get our greenway on the western edge of town, we'll have that green arm to embrace the center of downtown, just like the green campus embraces it on the east.
Right. You also said in the proposal, you gave some examples. Can you cite some cities that have successful parks or commons?
The examples that we used were wide-ranging. We put about 3 examples, and it's really hard to imagine a park like Millennium Park in Chicago in Ann Arbor. But if you kind of divide it by 20 and then pick and choose what might be appropriate in Ann Arbor, you get a sense of the intention of having this really attractive and active space where people want to be, but where they don't necessarily go just for that. They go for that on their way and connecting to other places. Another one is St. Louis, which has a new one right in the middle of their downtown, and it relates to their Gateway Park with the large arch and to the other civic institutions down the street. Right in the middle, these 2 tiny little blocks that are surrounded by significant buildings, you have a beautiful but simple sculpture park with digital displays and traditional sculpture and a splash play area for water feature and a number of things. And I've just recently visited it this fall, and it is a wonderful new addition to their downtown.